We're going to talk more about this now with Doug Herbert, who joins me on the set. Doug, many Palestinians, as well as the UN and other relief agencies, actually suspect that Israel is slowly adopting a strategy to clear out northern Gaza in something that's known as the General's Plan. This has already been widely reported in the Israeli press. Tell us a bit more about that.
This plan has been everywhere in the Israeli press, and I have to underline, Jeannie, that it is not official Israeli government policy. But Palestinians, even the UN relief agencies think it is. What it is, in a nutshell, is to plan an attempt to seal off about a third of the Gaza Strip, the northern part of the Gaza Strip, basically declare it a closed military zone. Why? In order to starve or force to surrender or starve the remaining Hamas militants in that part of Gaza. They've been coming back. They've been regrouping, according to the Israeli military. So the idea is create this zone. No food would come in. No water would come in. Anyone left would be literally driven to starvation unless they surrender. And that would be the way, presumably, the Israeli military would be able to flush out remaining Hamas militants. Well, this plan was originally mooted by a retired senior officer. His name is Giora Island, and he led sort of this informal ad hoc group of military officers who are apparently really behind the idea of this plan. They think it would work. They even think that eventually it could put enough pressure on Hamas, being under starvation, to surrender the remaining hostages that they're holding. That's the idea. The collateral, the upshot is, and this is why it's causing a lot of alarm, not just in the Israeli press, but among Palestinians, among United Nations officials, among relief and aid agencies. It's because you have the prospect of hundreds of thousands. The UN estimates about 400,000 Palestinian civilians, not Hamas, civilians, live in the northern Gaza area, in that part of the Gaza Strip. They would essentially be trapped. You're saying, well, why would they be trapped? Well, because yes, they've been asked to leave. They've been given evacuation orders by the Israeli military. They've been escalating those orders. They've been asked to evacuate for a year now, but the Israeli military has been stepping that up and now closing the timeline, saying, get out, go to the south, we'll give you an evacuation road. You have about a week to 10 days to do it. After that, if you're left, you're considered a combatant. A lot of Palestinians don't have the means to flee, or they're too afraid to flee. They think that the area they might go to, the so-called safe zone, is no safer than where they would be surrounded by Israeli troops in the north. So they stay put. And that is what is causing a lot of alarm here. It is a plan that, in the name of starving out, in quotes, Hamas, or driving Hamas to surrender, you end up with the prospect of trapping hundreds of thousands of civilians in a tiny, concentrated part of Gaza, about a third of the strip that's sealed off militarily.
And given that this plan is not official, has there been any response from the Israeli Prime Minister, for example, Benjamin Netanyahu?
Right. And I'll say it once again. This is not official, explicit policy. We just see the makings. A lot of people are reading into what they're seeing there, the evacuation orders, the rooting out of Hamas, the stepped-up strikes in the region, and they're saying this looks like the plan being enacted. Benjamin Netanyahu, according to officials who've privately spoken to the Israeli press, say that he has studied and read the plan. He knows about it. He hasn't weighed in. He hasn't said one way or the other how he feels about it. What we do know, because we've been reporting it all along since the very beginning of this conflict, if not since the beginning of his government, he's surrounded by ultra-nationalists, far-right nationalists in his government who would love to see this plan implemented. One of them, the finance minister, Smotrich, actually recently said, mooted the idea that he'd want to see settlers, Jewish settlers, move back in place of Palestinians. That's what some fear the ultimate conclusion of this sort of general's plan would be. Not just to create a military zone to snuff out Hamas, but also eventually to create a zone that would provide space for Israeli settlers to come back in and settle. I have to close by saying, once again, this is all, at this point, speculation. This is the sayings, the utterances of one or two or three far-right ultra-nationalist ministers in the government. It is not explicit policy by any means. Not today as I speak.
Doug, thank you for that. France 24's Doug Herbert.